Welcome to the Deadlights podcast. I'm your host, Sam.
And I'm your other host, Leslie, and we're bringing you another week of horror, you guys.
Yet another week of horror.
Another one.
Another one.
Another one.
We need to have one of those like DJ openers. Another one.
Another one.
From DLP.
It's like Siri.
Like Siri. Yeah, we should get Siri to do it.
Yeah.
She'll do it for free.
Yeah. Hey, Siri. Bitch.
Well, then, I guess she won't.
She only pops up when she wants.
Well, okay. That's great.
That was
all right, we're here for the horror.
Yeah.
We are here for the horror. Sad one. We got a depressing
God.
one this week.
We had to come in with high energy. Otherwise, I don't know how I would have been able to get through it.
It's going to be a little bit of a downer for sure, as this movie was. Which was...
Yeah, what was it?
Children of Men from 2006. Directed by Alfonso Cuarón. Written by Alfonso Cuarón, Timothy J. Sexton, David Arata, Mark Fergus, and Hawk Ostby. Mm-hmm. In 2027, in a chaotic world in which women have somehow become infertile, a former activist agrees to help transport a miraculously pregnant woman to a sanctuary at sea. This was an interesting watch for sure because, first of all, this movie came out in 2006. But now we are in 2024, almost 20 years removed. And we're coming up on the year that this takes place in 2027. So
I am ready to be infertile for mankind.
No, we need you to be fertile.
Unfertile.
All right. Well, unfertile by choice. That's fine, I guess. But yeah, it is just kind of an interesting take, in these movies that are like near future, where it's a future movie, but it's not futuristic. It's like
Apocalyptic.
It's apocalyptic, but it's close to reality. It's close to our world. So in these type of movies, it's just interesting to see people's takes on what the near future would look like. And to me, those are kind of movies that are a little more creepy and scary because it does feel like it's pretty close to this world.
Oh, yeah. I mean, especially with the wars that are going on right now. Those scenes were really hard in this movie to consume. And
also wanted to mention Alfonso Cuarón real quick because he's a pretty big director. And this was, I think, one of his earlier bigger films. He has since directed Gravity, and Roma is another big one that he directed.
Roma is something beautiful.
Beautiful. He started as a cinematographer first, as a cameraman. So
I can tell. Yeah.
A lot of his movies are very cinematic, very visual. So I think we were getting a lot of that in here as well. Just a side note, he also directed Harry Potter and the Prisoner of Azkaban, I think. Just thought that was
interesting.
Kind of an interesting offshoot.
Yeah. Those movies are very stylistic and they all kind of, they have their own little flair because, they have different directors, but for the most part, tonality is kind of the same. So there's not a lot of I think creative freedom that you can do with those movies.
I would be interested in rewatching that because I didn't know he directed that, and I haven't seen those movies in a very long time. I would be interested to rewatch that now, knowing his other movies, just to see where the Cuarón-ness comes through.
I can see it a little bit in comparison to this movie. Is the shots in where we're zooming in in the prison with
Sinister Black. Or Sirius Black?
Sirius Black. Sinister Black. I love that.
I'm clearly not a Harry Potter guy.
Wow.
Whoops.
No, but those are the only scenes that I can from the top of my head can be like, oh, okay, I see that.
Yes.
Because, are we jumping into the can?
Let's get into the can. Let's do it. Let's jump in. Since we're talking about the filmmaker anyway, let's talk about the filmmaking.
When you mentioned that he was a filmmaker, he was a cinematographer, I can see it through the scenes in which we were holding the camera. It was a handheld camera. We were right there in the action. And it is to really implode the explosions, and the war aspects of what this movie was.
I think almost every shot was handheld. There was very little of them putting it on a tripod. And I think you're right. It's to ground us in this reality, in this world that we're in. We're also talking about a lot of long takes, which is another thing that he loves to do. He did that a lot in Gravity as well. He's putting us in these uncomfortable situations and leaving us in these uncomfortable situations for a very long time. Some of these shots are minutes, 10 minutes, it seems like. And it's incredibly impressive because especially in this movie when there's so many moving parts. You have people in cars, you have people running, you have fire, you have explosions, guns,
action,
all this kind of stuff, blood spurting everywhere. That takes a lot of pre-planning. That takes so much vision of what you want out of one shot and so much pre-production to actually achieve that. And so every time I see this movie, that is one of the things that really, really impresses me is the amount of long takes that he has, and how fluid they are, how flawless they seem, and how natural they seem too. And I think that also comes from the script and the acting along with these long takes to really ground us in this world that is chaotic and is dirty and is dangerous.
Julian and Theo met among a million protesters in a rally by chance. But they were there because of what they believed in the first place. But by chance, Dylan was born.
This is him?
Yeah, that's it. He'd have been about your age, magical child. In 2008, along came the flu pandemic. And then by chance, he was gone. Theo's faith lost out to chance.
And also, I think that goes along with the actors, too. I'd love to talk about them. I think that the actors with the script, it feels very natural. It feels, I don't know this for sure, but it does kind of feel like Cuarón was, if you feel like you want to improv some things, do it. Because so many of those long takes where we have conversations between people, I don't know. It just felt so natural. And maybe it was all scripted and it was just very, very well written and very well acted. But the performances combined with the long takes makes everything feel so much more real.
It's hard for me to look at you. He had your eyes.
We're in a world where people are very hopeless. People are very lost, and I don't think people really know how to respond or be emotional in ways. I think people have shut off a lot of their emotions because of the hopelessness of the world around them. So when we have scenes where there is some emotion, it almost feels off. It's almost like these people aren't used to feeling this. There's very little laughing. There's very little smiling. Even like crying, there's very little of people being sad, but that's because I think people are so desensitized to the world around them.
They're just surviving. Shut off. Yeah. At one point, Jasper asked Theo, like, how's the dating life?
Dating ain't what it used to be, is it, amigo?
Not saying that dating is all about getting with someone and marrying them and having children, but like when society has ingrained that onto us and there's like women are infertile, like what happens then?
What's the point?
What's the point of being with someone, trying to live with someone? That's just like an unnecessary thing in this world. And Theo definitely is stuck in routine. He's stuck in just waking up, going to work, then going to have drinks, and then doing that all over again.
And just feeling bad.
and then just feeling bad.
Same as every other day. Woke up, felt like shit. Went to work, felt like shit.
That's called a hangover, amigo.
At least with a hangover, I feel something.
You're forced to ask yourself, what's the point? Like, what am I living for? I think that kind of actually nicely transitions into the meats.
Well, you know, I'm
Look at that.
a professional podcaster now.
Wow.
Wow.
The transitions are incredible.
Yeah, I remember actors' names.
Wow. This is a milestone episode for you. This is a milestone.
Yeah.
Because we are talking about hopelessness. This movie is just one big picture of hopelessness, and what are people's responses to living in a hopeless world? And where do you find meaning in a hopeless world? We see many different ways that people are trying to find purpose. People are joining new religions, new cults. They kind of mentioned that a little bit. People are joining radical political groups. People are just committing crime. And some people are just being drones. They're just going through their routine and not really thinking about anything that's going on. They're being ignorant to the world because they can't deal with how dreary everything is. So there's this ignoring it.
Yeah. If they stop and think about the dreads of the world, then now they are having to do something about it.
Mm-hmm.
Even if they discovered the cure for infertility, doesn't matter. Too late. World went to shit.
Theo was struggling with that, of just like, I don't care who I am. I don't care what I'm doing, until it was literally like being shoved at him.
Mm-hmm.
And he is now having to do something about it.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
Yeah, he really was just an example of another drone that was just breathing, and that's it. Really wasn't doing anything with his life until this new cause was forced upon him.
You should make it public.
Well, you saw the telly. She's about to be very public.
Doesn't matter. She's pregnant. Whatever your political ideas are, it's irrelevant. It doesn't matter.
Oh, come on.
She needs a doctor.
You really don't get it.
He almost seems like the perfect person to have that put upon him, because he has no political motivations. He has no personal motivations for holding on to the first baby in 18 years. He was a father. He was a father, and now he lost his child. So he's almost the perfect person to look after this new mom and understand the gravity of the situation. And
Well, he can have those feelings again.
yeah,
Because I'm not a mom, but I am an aunt, and I still have this amount of love for them that if they were disposed onto me, I would do my darnest to protect them. They're a child, they're innocent, and ultimately they're a human being. They're a living being that, like, he, as a previous father, could recall the feelings of being the protector, of being like having love.
Put her on your shoulder. Just tap her back. Gently. There you go.
there's definitely a political aspect about this movie where when we learn that the woman is pregnant with a child, the radical group that has her is definitely looking to use the baby for political gain.
Listen, Listen, she belongs here. And this baby is the flag that could unite us all.
We never use this baby for political purposes.
My baby is not a flag.
They were referring to the baby as a flag because it's a symbol. It's not even a child. It's not even a human anymore. It is just a symbol. And they wanted to use it for an uprising against the government. Julianne Moore's character, believed that there could be peace. This baby could bring everyone together and actually have peace behind new life. But everyone else in her political group didn't believe that.
Well,
they were all
men.
And they were all men. They didn't believe that there could be peace. And they ultimately killed her over it. They usurped her power.
Mm-hmm.
Luke killed Julian. They want your baby. They killed Julian. They killed Julian. They're going to kill me. We have to leave.
But that moment that you just brought up, where the baby is crying in the middle of this battle, but everyone stops. The refugees, the radical political group, the army, everyone stops for that baby. That, I think, is a moment that proves her point. It proves that we can be peaceful and we can come together and unite under something that is way more important than all of our own desires. But then the war continues right after that. It's a moment of it, but I do think it's a moment to show that it's possible. You know, there is maybe hope.
Life is beautiful. It can be beautiful. And the way that Jasper and his wife, even though his wife was no longer, it seems like, able to like speak or move, he was trying to give her a very peaceful life, you know, and he seemed happy.
He was making jokes.
He was kooky. He was growing his weed.
One of the few characters that we see be happy in this movie.
And it was because he was removed.
Pull my finger, quick.
Oh, Jasper, no. Oh, fucking hell, that's disgusting.
He still had passion about human beings, and he loved refugees. His whole house was full of just in support of housing human beings. That when Theo just presented, he came unannounced with the person who was pregnant. He didn't, you know, like had any sort of inclination that he wasn't going to help.
Yeah.
He was like, no, absolutely. Let me cook for you. He's contributing in the way that he, in his heart and in his mind, he is open to the idea of refugees coming in. And the only way that he's not contributing fully is to the workforce.
True.
So, yeah, it is hard. At times I do want to be a Jasper in a world where it's just hustle and bustle and guns and politics. Like
I do like his character because it just shows another response and reaction to the end of the world, essentially. Running off to the woods and just making your own life. That's just another way to deal with the end of the world. There's definitely also, I think, an element of this movie kind of commenting on desensitizing people to violence, because there was, as we're walking through the streets of London, there's a lot of fucked up shit going on. I mean, there's like people in cages, refugees that are going to be deported or sent somewhere we don't really know, or maybe just killed, just in cages on the street. And people just walk past and they don't even notice. I mean, he gets kidnapped. Theo gets kidnapped at one moment. No one really bats an eye to that. So I think that it is somewhat of a comment on us being desensitized to violence, and therefore allowing violence to continue because we don't even think about it anymore. He himself, Theo, the character, was definitely desensitized to a lot of things going on around him.
I mean, right off the bat in the beginning of the film, he's going and getting coffee, and everybody's crowded in this coffee shop to look at the TV because the youngest person in the world, quote unquote, the celebrity, had been stabbed.
The world was stunned today by the death of Diego Ricardo, the youngest person on the planet. Diego Ricardo, the youngest person on the planet.
And he was shooken up for sure. And he went to work and he was like, actually, no, I can't be here. And then he went to Jasper's.
Yeah.
To just kind of calm down. I would have too.
Escape the world.
Yeah.
The biggest thing he was complaining about was the ringing in his ear. He's like, my ears are still ringing from that bomb. And that was his main concern, not the people that were murdered
yeah,
and
because
destroyed.
he's desensitized.
Yeah.
Well, that was even worse, everybody crying. I mean, baby Diego, come on. The guy was a wanker.
Yeah, but he was the youngest wanker on earth.
It's very much trying to show the hopelessness of this world, but also it definitely calls into question how we feel about our world, you know? And how desensitized are we when we pass someone who's homeless on the street, someone who's in need, and we just ignore them, you know? This movie is an extreme example, but it reminds us of ourselves. And I think that's kind of the brilliance of this movie, is that it's not real, but so many things in this movie are so real.
Mm-hmm. I'd never seen this movie before. And it really definitely, to me, made it seem like these folks that wrote this movie centralized the movie on just a refugee perspective. Because there was just a lot of that, and it just kind of was like a reminder of like, hey folks, like when we make war, people are gonna need to go somewhere else because we're killing them. And our instincts of survival are gonna have us do anything possible because that is our top priority. And yes, it makes sense in this world for women to be infertile, because how are you going to have war right at your doorstep and still expect humanity to keep going?
Yeah.
Why can't we make babies anymore? Some of them say it's genetic experiments, gamma rays, pollution, same old, same old.
And you mentioned it's like, well, it seems like animals are still able to reproduce. And it's, yeah, because animals are not creating war.
Nope.
They're not able to see it the way that we do. They just, all they know is, oh, there's an explosion. I got to run away to a safer spot.
Yeah. One thing I did appreciate about this movie was whenever we're in the city, in like the refugee camp, greens, blues that are very sickly, destruction everywhere. It looks terrible. But when we go to Jasper's or we go to the the Fishes compound, we're in nature. Nature's still going strong. Like there's a lot of really pretty imagery of the forest and of trees, and we see deer and we see kittens and we see puppies, you know?
Yeah.
All these animals in nature are still persisting. And so to me, that's very much showing like the world is ridding itself of the human disease, you know, the disease that is humans.
We're the parasites.
We're the parasites, and we are dying out. But the things that are more innocent, nature, animals, they're living on because they, like you said, they don't have political motivations. They don't have desires and wants. All they know is surviving. And
their wants is just to be able to be safe enough to raise their youngings, their youngings to grow into adults and so forth.
Yeah.
And the plants need them to be able to eat from them, poop it out, and then
Grow more plants.
fertilize. Yeah. It's just like this ecosystem, but we take and take and take, and we don't give.
Humans are not fitting within the ecosystem, and therefore the world is ridding them.
That's why they're not able to produce.
Yeah. Yeah. I do like and appreciate that this movie does not definitively say this is why women can't have.
No solution.
There's no solution. It allows us to kind of fill in the blanks, and it also reinforces that humans have no idea what the fuck's going on. Like, they don't know the cause of it, and so everyone just feels like a chicken with their head cut off. Running for the sake of running, breathing for the sake of breathing, with no purpose at all.
Just to destroy.
Just to destroy.
Keep destroying.
Yeah.
Being right. I'm right. No, I'm more right than you.
Right.
Look, I have a bigger gun than you.
I got a bazooka.
I got a bazooka.
That's a good name for a kid. Now thinking about it.
I'm going to call her Bazooka.
Bazooka?
You don't like it?
I'm so glad she went with Dylan.
Me too.
Bazooka? Girl?
Come on.
Girl.
All right, let's get to the cook.
Yeah,
get
let's
to the
cook it up.
There's a lot of, we already kind of mentioned it a couple times, there's a lot of visual storytelling going on here, and I love that. Every time I watch this movie, there's a new newspaper I see in the background or newscast that's going on the TV that I just notice it's filling in this world. So the world building in this movie is great. And like we kind of mentioned before, we're seeing how people are responding to the end of the world in different ways. I like that moment when he goes to his cousin's to get the documentation, and his cousin is part of the 1%. And as soon as you cross a certain border into the 1%'s area, it's completely different than the rest of the world. It feels obviously like the world that we are in now. They're trying to recreate the old world where everything is chill, everything's cool. They still have the pageantry of the old world with like the soldiers on the horses, and it feels very just like ignorance is bliss. And then we go into his cousin's house, and it's full of art that he has, like very famous art. The Michelangelo's David and Picasso, you know? Picasso. That he just has there for no reason. Hold. I was just going to try to push through, but the Picasso.
No, I wasn't going to let you.
No.
I wasn't going to. Okay.
Picasso.
Picasso. That should be his name. Why didn't he?
I agree.
Think of that. Oh, God.
But I love that character. I love his cousin's character, because near the end of that scene, Theo is like,
what keeps you going? You know what it is, Theo? I just don't think about it.
it's like the ultimate image of ignorance is bliss. And especially when you're in the 1%, you're allowed and able to create your own world. And so these 1%ers have just created a fake world that is so far removed from reality.
Yeah.
They literally don't even think about
It's
it.
for the sake of just saying they could. It's to up one each other.
Yeah.
Oh, you have this? Oh, well, I have this. Oh, you have that? Well, I got this last night. Oh, my God.
I've got the David now.
I got the grills.
Yeah.
That make me look like a supervillain and cost me $480,000.
I got a Picasso.
I got a Picasso.
Picasso.
Yeah. It is a strange world, I'm sure, to be that rich that nothing bothers you. I wouldn't want that. And I mean, I can have the luxury of saying that because I'm not in the 1%.
Very true. Neither of us are.
And I'm happy to be able to have that perspective, because although I've gone from not being so, like, not having a lot of money growing up to like being okay. It's, I still see how even my parents, who also didn't grow up with money, but had gotten themselves to a point where they have careers and they're stable and they have money to be able to travel, they still hold on to their money. You know, they're not going to be spending it on stupid artwork that, I mean, not saying that it's stupid, because I am also an artist, but they don't.
It's meaningless.
It's meaningless to have the first original piece of anything.
Right.
Especially
in this world.
Because like Theo's like, oh, my mom had fucking, what's the statue?
The plastic David in the bathroom.
In the bathroom.
Yeah.
In the bathroom.
My mum had a plastic one in the bathroom. It was a lamp.
You know, like a plastic thing in the bathroom. Like, you can get art anywhere.
Yeah.
And you don't have to spend millions of dollars. You only do that because you want to say that you could.
Yeah. It's a symbol. I also think that even the rich, the 1%, the one thing that they can't escape is the fact that women can't have children. So this fact that is affecting everybody, that whereas before maybe the 1% felt like their money could get them out of any situation, that is a situation they can spend as much money as they want in the world, but that they can't escape that. So him collecting this art, I think, is his only way to feel like he has control over his world, in a world where actually no one has control over the fact that there's no kids coming. Like, women are not getting pregnant. So I like that, because it puts everyone on somewhat of an even playing field.
Take your pills. Alex. Alex? Alex!
No one can have kids. And that is just a big depression umbrella over everyone.
Because
so I like that.
Essentially there is an expiration date. Mm-hmm. Because the reason why the 18-year-old, the youngest person in the world, was such a symbol is because their death mattered. Them getting to old age mattered, because that was the date of humanity.
Yep. And I think that the same way that the cousin is buying art is how people are viewing baby Diego, the youngest kid who at the beginning of this movie dies. It's this idea of when you don't have hope, when you don't have a purpose, what do you then put your purpose into? And most people were putting it in baby Diego, because he was a reminder of someone younger, of new life. He was the newest life that we have had. And so he was something that people were able to put their faith in. And I wrote down the note, is faith strong enough? And I think that people were trying to put their faiths in a lot of different things. Baby Diego was one of them. Buying art was another one. You know, medication. People were medicating themselves. New religions, you know, and new causes. These are all things that people were trying. Work. People were trying to put their faiths into. But it wasn't enough. It wasn't enough to actually escape the hopelessness of this reality.
Throughout his life, Diego Ricardo was a tragic reminder of the 18 years of infertility that humanity has endured.
We keep going back to the theme of season 3, which is reaping what you sow.
Yeah.
In so many of these movies, we're seeing the results of human actions. And I feel like in this movie, we're at the point where we are seeing the fruits of all of the decisions of humans in history before. So we're at the end of it. We're at like what is being reaped from the soil, and what's being reaped is nothing. There's no children. Because of what you're saying, there's no point. And that comes from the decisions that people have made before, now seeping down into the children, literally the children. The sins of the father are coming back to affect the children. And so I think this movie very much falls in line with our season 3 theme that we did not plan for, of reaping what you sow. And we're seeing the results of the bad soil, the bad tending that we had from the previous generation now seeping down into the new generation. But maybe there is some hope. Maybe there's some hope.
There was some children laughing at the end.
We got kids.
Fingers crossed that
We got kids.
little Dylan made it to be able to be amongst children too, because that's one really important thing about the development of a child. They can't just spend their early childhood with just a bunch of adults. They gotta be among their own group of little kids. That's how they like teach each other.
Yeah. I think life is going to be pretty tough for Dylan at the beginning here, but she is definitely going to be a good move forward for the future to hopefully have more children. Let's get to the thrill.
Yeah.
Let's get to the actual scariness of this movie. And I mean, you said it while we were watching it, and I tend to agree that this was probably one of the scariest movies that we've watched so far. And to me, that comes from how real it is and how close to reality this non-reality is, which is scary.
It's scary.
Yeah.
I can't imagine having to survive in that kind of circumstances of where it's right in front of me, of bombing and shootings.
And that is a reality for some people. I mean, there's wars going on all the time. And we're lucky enough to be in a place where we don't have to see that. But people are seeing that and living that every day. And even down to the refugees, we aren't seeing people put in cages. But I know for sure people are being put in cages because they're being sent somewhere else. They're being contained because they, quote unquote, don't belong here. So even though to us it looks weird and scary, it's a reality, which makes it even scarier. Like when they actually made it to the refugee camp and the process of them going into the refugee camp, getting on a bus, being in cages, I saw the Holocaust. Like the Holocaust, there was so many Holocaust imagery going on there, that then made it even more real. It's like, okay, this is a fake movie, but this has happened before. People have been shoved onto trains and shipped off to a prison camp.
It happens all the time.
And it's still happening. So
it happened when Hawaii was bombed with the Japanese and the Asian folks.
Yep.
Their concentration camps in my little hometown, in where you can go and visit and you can still see, the outlinings of the prisons that America has tried so hard to keep under wraps. But there were so many concentration camps for Asians, Americans, and and families, if they weren't so lucky to be able to escape. And also Mexicans are being shoved in their own frickin' states where they're from, in Arizona and all of these border patrol stations, in cages, in literal cages, and being separated from their families.
The scariness of this movie comes when you realize that it's not that far off.
No,
from reality.
It's not, and it keeps happening. And that's why I said that social media is scary but beautiful and overwhelming all at the same time, because we are able to have the knowledge that these things are happening everywhere and we're not better than anyone else, and no one else is better than us. We are doing it to each other, to humanity, to like we're doing it to ourselves. Like we are them and they are us, you know, like we are here to be, like we should be here in this planet to be able to protect ourselves.
Yeah.
And we have to start, because like this planet is not doing well.
No. Yeah. And unfortunately, this movie is a one big reminder of that.
Bummer.
Like we said from the beginning of this episode, this is depressing. This is a very depressing movie, and it's going to be a depressing episode. But highly suggest watching this movie because it makes us ask these questions. It's a mirror. Nice. This movie is a mirror of the world. Whether we choose to accept that this movie is realistic or not, it does remind us of our reality, which is really, really scary. There was no monsters. There was no supernatural things going on in this movie. But it's another one of those movies that reminds us of the depravity of man. And in some ways, this movie also reminds us of the benevolence of man, because they did meet people along their journey that genuinely helped them and genuinely did not care about themselves, but put the life of the new life ahead of themselves. So,
and that comes with the big sacrifice, their own life.
This hopelessness that this movie set up, you have just these tiny little moments of light, of actual hope, of people being good people to be good people. And that's what gets them to the end. That is actually what gets them to tomorrow, the boat. I think that those small moments of hope are amplified even more because everything else is so dreary and so fucked up and so sad, that when we have these moments of seeing a genuine person who cares about getting these people to the boat, we're like, oh, thank God.
Thank God.
We love you so much more.
I just kept saying, we need to get to the boat. I need to get to the boat. I need to get out of this movie.
Get me out of this movie.
Please get me out of this movie.
Well, let's get to the ride. The boat ride.
Yeah.
This movie was one of the longer movies that we've watched, but I always think it's a very entertaining movie.
Oh, it's so good.
There's no moment of like downtime. We're either moving towards the goal, which is getting the pregnant woman to the boat, or we're learning more information about the characters, or we're just in the world, and the world itself is very interesting to be in. And so there's always something interesting going on. And like I said, with these long takes, these one shots, we're given a lot of details to look at. So every time I watch this movie, I'm like, oh, that's cool. Like, oh, I didn't notice that before.
There's also like our characters, like you said, keep moving. If we're not at Jasper Space, you know, that's when we like had taken a pause
and chill.
And we liked it. We like it there as the audience, because we're like, okay, we're safe. We're having fun. We're eating.
Yeah.
We're, you know, like smoking weed. Like we're safe. But everywhere else, just moving. Which I can see, not in a bad way, but like I can see how smart the script is, because we don't want to be in one location, because in this world, the logic is that we're not safe. And how do you write it in such a way that keeps us moving.
Yep.
So, like, I loved that there was momentum there.
Yes. They were able to keep the stakes heightened the whole time. So there was something always at risk. And for the most part, it was just like our lives, you know, even from the beginning. We already mentioned the scene where he's in the coffee shop and it blows up. Like, he's not even on a journey at that point. He's just going through his daily life.
He was putting whiskey in his coffee.
Just narrowly avoided death. So that means that at any moment, we could die.
We could die.
And that's the first scene of the movie. So,
and then he showed us that he didn't care enough. And it wasn't because he was a terrible person, but because he was so desensitized.
That probably has happened to him before.
Can't say that word. Desensitized.
The last thing I wanted to mention was there is a lot of biblical imagery going on here. Obviously, the big one is the Immaculate Conception. You know, we have a woman who is pregnant in a world where women can't get pregnant. This baby is somewhat of a savior for the world. So that is a pretty clear one.
She also makes the joke.
I'm a virgin.
Sorry?
Be wicked, eh?
Exactly.
I love that she made that joke.
Very clear. And then there's this thing that happens throughout the movie where he doesn't have shoes. He loses his shoes at one point, and then for most of the movie, he's either walking around in thong flip-flops or no shoes.
Barefoot, and I'm
feet.
just like, ouch.
Owie. And we kind of talked about it before where the feet, the cleaning of the feet, and the idea of having to journey on your feet is very biblical as well.
Especially because, you know, he is a man. He's a man, and he's having to be able to be this person's everything for the sake of the baby.
Yes. And there was even that moment of when they made it to Jasper's house, he gave him a foot bath. You know, he cleaned his feet, which is a very, again, imagery from the Bible, very, very biblical thing. And then at the end, we have a new baby, we have a new mother, and they're in a boat, and they're very much going down the river like Moses, who was the savior of the Jews. He was the liberator of slaves. And that very much feels like that's what baby Dylan has the capacity to do, is to liberate this world from the chains of hopelessness.
Because also the radicals were stating that the world wasn't going to accept this baby because it came from a refugee.
We all know this government would never acknowledge the first human birth in 18 years from a Fuji.
A wanted Fuji. Why don't we explain to Mr. Farron what they do to immigrants in this country?
He knows.
So they were boxing her. They were putting the label and just seeing her as that, as well as the baby now. Yeah. And it's like, no, they're humans first and foremost.
Yeah. That should not be a concern.
This baby, blank slate, human being.
Yeah.
And that is, you know, what just people saw her as.
Yeah.
Not the color of her skin, not her status, nothing else but the fact that she was a brand new mother. And this baby is a miracle.
Miracle baby. Children of Men.
Wow.
2006. Let's get to these Smash Pumpkins.
Yeah.
Do you have a number?
I think so.
Okay.
Yeah, I think I'm going to give it a standard 4.
Standard 4.
Yeah. Goddamn. It's a really well-made movie for the reasons as such. Well written, well acted. Love all the imagery. I think the actions were well written and well represented. Fuck, it's so heavy.
Yeah.
It's so heavy. I don't know how you've seen this multiple times. Like I was mentioning to you I think it was off mic. I don't see war movies. They're so heavy to me, and very hurtful and sad. And that's why I just wouldn't see it again. But I loved this movie, and I have heard so much about it. So I'm glad we pulled it. I'm glad I've seen it.
Yes.
Oh, God.
Heavy. I think what keeps pulling me back to this movie is the watchability factor. Like, with all those long takes, with all these details that they put in there, it really keeps me in it. And it really keeps me coming back to learn more about this world that they don't fully explain. You just kind of have to live in it to understand what's going on. And with that, it makes it so much more rich, and I can fill in blanks where I want to. And so it makes it a very fun experience, like viewing experience for me, because I get to be detective and notice these little things that they're putting in there to try to indicate to me what's going on. And I just think also too, the filmmaking is incredible. Like, I love all these long takes. I love, the color tone, this very sickly green and blues. And the acting is great, and it's a very natural film. It feels so like picture of reality, which then in turn makes it scarier. So I think that's what keeps me watching this movie. I'm going to give it a 4.5.
Nice.
4.5. Yes. I think, the 0.5 kind of comes off where it wasn't that scary. It wasn't like super, super scary. It was really fucked up, and it was very hopeless and very close to reality, which makes it scary. But if we're talking about horror. I wasn't super horrified. But everything else, though, really, it's a great film.
Yeah.
It really is a great film.
I also want to give a shout out to how many animals were used in this movie, especially dogs. I've not seen this amount of dogs in one movie since Air Bud. So, like, congratulations. It's not easy to, I'm pretty sure, be filming such high intense scenes and have animals.
Can't be.
It was insane, but it makes sense because you will have animals all over the place.
Well, in a world where you don't have a baby or kids to take care of,
you're gonna take that
it fills it.
That woman that was guiding them to the dog, she was like carrying the dog like a freaking child, and I get you. I see you.
Logically, it makes sense that there would be animals running around
all over the place.
Yeah.
Good
point. There was so many animals.
So many, and I was so happy.
Yeah. Luckily, we didn't see any die. Right?
We saw horses.
Well, they were already dead.
Fire.
They were burning, but luckily we didn't see the act of them dying.
When I'm burning,
we just saw the barbecue after.
Yummy.
Wow. All right, cool. Children of Men, go see it. Have a good cry afterwards.
Yeah. And if you go see it and you have your own thoughts, please call us.
Please call us.
Yeah. At 773-669-6677.
Please give us a call. We would love to hear your thoughts on this movie, your thoughts on other movies.
Yeah. No, just this one.
Just this one. Suggestions for other movies that we should put in the bucket, or stories that you have of why you love horror, supernatural encounters, whatever.
Anything. Aliens, alien encounters. Is that what you ask?
That's what I asked.
Nice.
I'll take it.
I'll take it too.
I want all of it. Yeah.
I will not go to sleep.
We should probably pick a movie for next week.
Oh, we should.
Unless we're just ending it here.
No, we're just gonna.
We're done. End of the world.
My bad.
My bad.
Skipped ahead. I get to choose.
You get to choose. Maybe choose, hopefully, a less depressing film.
You want an alien movie?
I'll take an alien movie. I'll also take I want like a freaking classic slasher movie.
Ooh, classic slasher movie.
Classic.
Let's see. Did I pick one? A father and his daughter struggle to survive in deep space where they live in isolation.
Wow. Robert Pattinson's back again?
Robert Pattinson.
He's all over this.
Is back.
High Life?
Yeah.
High Life.
High Life. 5.
Wow, Robbie, you are making a lot of appearances on season 3, but I'm fine with it.
I'm fine with it.
I'm totally fine with it. Cool. High life. Speaking of sci-fi.
In space.
In space.
Wow. Again,
cool.
a full writing room.
Jeez. Full writing room.
5.
Wow. Okay. Cool.
Damn.
As long as it works. As long as it works.
It should. It's
Cool.
Robert Pattinson.
True.
Everything works when he's on.
Very true.
But yeah. All right.
All right.
Well, we'll get out of here.
Bye.
You can follow me on Color Me Leslie.
You can follow me at Beep Beep Richie T. You can follow us at the Deadlights Pod. But until next week,
Let's get spooky.
Children of men, I am a kid of a dude.